Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Administration and Operations Committee of September the 20th. Attendance has been taken, noting everybody is here today. Can I get approval of, anybody have anything to add to the agenda? Councillor Gatward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have one item under other business regarding Canesville sanitary sewers.
Canesville Center Sewers. Thank you. So we will put that as 10.2. Anybody else? Mayor Bailey?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to do something under new business to 11.3 regarding the letter that is on in front of you, just to discuss it before I send it out. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, can I get a mover of the agenda as amended? Mayor Bailey, Councillor Coleman. Questions? All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay. Declaration of pecuniary interest. If you have any, please do so now or at the time. Delegations. We do have a delegation with us this evening. We have we'll have to correct these agenda minutes here because it says acting inspector, which is no longer. So we will have to take off that word acting. Inspector Quenneville, Jennifer Haley, and Marty Verhey from the Police Services Board are here for a presentation. Come on up, folks. Not going to come up, Marty? Nice. For the police. Nice. Okay. Whenever you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pierce. We don't have a slide deck for you tonight. We're just going to give you a quick oral report. It's been a very busy few weeks, so apologies for not having the slide deck. But Councillor Pierce had asked us to come back in before council term completed. So we're just coming in tonight to give you a quick update on some of the initiatives and issues we've been working on. Thank you to those of you that were able to make it out to the detachment tour last week. I know that those of you that came enjoyed that and got to see the behind the scenes and how the building is functioning and what a great space it is, and to get feedback from Inspector Quenneville from the officers about how that space is being utilized. So that was really great to have that opportunity. I want to formally introduce now, as Councillor Pierce mentioned, Inspector Quenneville. She's been not only promoted but assigned to as detachment commander here for Brant. We've signed her to a lifelong contract. Mayor Bailey, myself, and Jim Brown, Member Brown, participated in the interview selection process with the OPP, and Inspector Quenneville was a successful candidate, and we're so pleased to have her continue the momentum that she started since she's been here in the spring, and we're looking forward to that continuity and that stability that'll bring to not only the work that Police Services Board does, but the work that she'll do in turn with the OPP members here in Brant. She'll talk a little bit more about herself in a bit, but I just wanted to, it's now official. We were kind of waiting for a little bit because Inspector needed to get all her uniform pieces together and all the things that go along with being an inspector now. So that now is official, and we're so pleased with that. I just want to give you a quick update. Last meeting that we were in, we talked to you about the challenge coins and how we had them produced, and you've seen a couple of them, I think. We've spent the summer distributing them to the OPP members through barbecues. Police Service Board members, including Member Verhey and Member Brown and Mayor Bailey, myself and Councillor Pierce, were out at all the different barbecues. The members themselves and the staff, the civilian staff, were just thrilled with that coin. It's really done what it was intended to do, which is to create that culture of belonging and the morale boost that we were hoping it would do, and to really create that special piece about Brant. So thank you again for the financial support for that project, because it's really been a phenomenal success. We've also need to recircle on some of the folks that were absent. We'll also be recircling with those that are currently away from work, so that they're part of that as well. And we just recently met with the OPP auxiliary team members and gave them their coins as well. So we've tried to get a broad swath of coverage, and then we'll recircle to those that we've missed. I also want to acknowledge that we, some of you were, that we talked last week at the detachment tour. We talked about an honorary coin that we gave retired Constable Ron Hardman for his service and dedication. many of you may know him from 52 years ago. He was involved in a car accident that resulted in his partner passing away in the line of duty, and Ron himself lost his leg and had a number of injuries. He did recover from those injuries, came back to work, and had a successful remainder of his career. He passed away last night. So it was excellent timing for us to be able to see him and his family, to be able to give him that coin and acknowledge his contributions to the county and to policing here in the county. Some other things that we've done as a police service board, you have on your desks a copy of the Brant County Dispatch. I know Councillor Gatward, last time that we were in, asked about our newsletter that's been kind of on the books for a while and got stalled out with COVID and what have you. With Inspector Quenville's help, we've really pushed this project forward. It will be in county residents' mailboxes by the end of this month. We wanted to get it well ahead of the election and everything like that. A special thank you to Sarah and county staff, Heather and Sarah specifically with the graphic design and layout. She did a phenomenal job partnering with us to bring this project to life. We had some visions and we had some ideas, but collaborating with the county staff on this has been really fruitful. And it'll also be, a soft copy will be up on the website so that it'll also be there accessible as well. And then we'll make sure that hard copies are available different places, OPP station here at the office, what have you, so that they'll also be available. So look for that in a more permanent version, but Nancy was able to copy this for you tonight so that you can see the first edition. And we already have content lined up for future newsletters, so that's great too. We're looking forward to that being a good communication tool with residents. Lastly, just a couple of other pieces I just wanted to update you on that the Police Service Board's been working on. You may know in the past, the Police Service Board's been involved with a contract with the Brant Towing Group. So one of the pieces that we have done over the past few years is we've really worked collaboratively with the Brant Towing Group members to bring that contract up to date, to bring it more in line with what's actually happening, the reporting on all that. And then most recently, we've actually terminated the contract because now with legislation, impending legislation and changes that the way things are done with tow truck certification and verification, that's now transitioned to OPP completely. So now the PSB doesn't need to be involved in that monitoring and that process because all those same checks and balances are being done by the OPP. So we've finished that and wrapped that up, and that seems to have moved smoothly over to that with the tow truck operators. And then lastly, just to give you as a heads up, I know it was a topic we've discussed for the past couple of meetings. The Grand Erie District School Board is doing a review of their school resource officer. So right now, we will not have an OPP officer able to go into any of the elementary or secondary schools in Brant. To do any of the educational programs, any of the safety talks, any of those types of things. If there's emergencies or if there's a call for service that's needed, of course, the officer is going to be there, but our school resource designated officer isn't able to go into schools at this time while they do a review of that whole program. The Police Service Board has crafted a letter to the Grand Erie District School Board to express our concern. I know Mayor Bailey was also going to be looking into a similar expression, but it is concerning because of the good work and the important topics that they do cover. We want to make sure that that's still a good partnership moving forward in the future while they do that review. So I'll just leave it with that. I'll transition now to Inspector Quenville to go over a couple of things with you.
Thank you, Chair Hilly. Good evening, everyone. I'm really grateful for this opportunity to meet all of you tonight. Some of you have had the pleasure of meeting, whether it was at the Canesville Fire Hall opening or just last week at our detachment. So I'm very happy to be here in Brant County. I've been with the OPP for more than 23 years now. I started in 1998 as a cadet. In 1999, I went to police college and took my post in Elgin County in Dutton, where I spent a number of years working frontline, and then became a domestic violence investigator, and then later into the crime unit, where I spent a number of years investigating serious criminal offenses. In 2012, I was promoted to a detective sergeant, in Perth County, so up in Sebringville. I worked there for a couple years and then took a post in both Middlesex and Elgin as a detective sergeant. In 2017, I was promoted to staff sergeant, and some may say in the policing community that I went to the dark side because I went from crime to traffic. So after 13 years in crime, I took a turn in my career and decided to engage with traffic. So I spent the next 5 years working with the traffic unit and managing our regional traffic team. So during that time, I had a number of really excellent acting opportunities that led to some great career development for me and made a lot of connections. I was an interim detachment commander in both Chatham, Kent, and Lambton. I was the manager for staffing and development for West Region. And most recently, prior to joining you here in Brant, I was the deputy director in provincial traffic operations in Orillia. So I spent a year working in Orillia and developed a significant number of corporate ties and certainly a better understanding of the corporate organization and how to navigate that, and made a number of connections there. So it's been a journey, to say the least, and certainly picked up a lot of experience along the way and made a lot of great connections. And I've been very fortunate to always been given lots of opportunities and lots of support. But having said that, opportunities don't come without hard work, and I've done that as well. So very committed to my work, and anyone that knows me would certainly vouch for that. So I'm very happy to be here. And I know there's been lots of joking about how long I'm going to be here, and I am committed to being here. So rest assured, I'm not looking to go anywhere anytime soon. So I'm happy to settle. I've unpacked. I'm making my office my home. So, and I'm really looking forward to the collaboration, and the officers. They seem genuinely happy that I'm here as well. So I've received a lot of very positive words of encouragement, and certainly since the announcement, been very engaged with the officers as well. Because I certainly offer a number of perspectives, from being able to have a conversation in the constable's area about what charges they're laying, to bigger picture kind of discussions about the organization. So I'm really looking forward to working with everyone going forward. So I live in London, so just a short jump down the highway. I'm a hockey mom and happily married. So that's me in a nutshell. So I look forward to chatting with each of you more as the years go by. So, but I did wanted to give a few additional operational updates as well, specifically about our traffic management unit. I know the county is very invested in traffic management and made an additional investment into officers. So they began their work in July and September, respectively. There's 2 officers of last year. So since that time, so from July of 2021 to August of this year, those 2 officers have laid collectively 2,293 Part 1 charges. So those are your speedings, your disobey stop signs, the simpler charges that are not going to be fought necessarily in court. They're not the more serious charges, so that are going to just issue a ticket. The Part 3 charges, so the more serious offenses, they've laid 79, and criminal charges, they've laid 19. So that could be an impaired, it could be a drive disqualified, a whole range of charges in relation to that as well. So they're making a significant contribution. They're out there all the time and engaging with your community. So the other part that we track is traffic stops, and certainly Brant County records higher than average traffic stop ratio for our number of officers. So that's also a good news story as well, that they're connecting with people in the community. I also wanted to tell you about our MCERT program. So we continue to work with the St. Leonard Society in support of the mental health in Brant County. So a St. Leonard's clinician is riding with our officers during the day and responding to the crisis calls. And they're providing support to the prolific persons in our community that are struggling with their mental health. So whether that's a follow-up call later on or when we actually respond in crisis, they're identifying who those people are and putting them in contact with the necessary supports. Year to date, end of August, we've seen a 38% increase in our mental health calls for service here in the county. The two other items I wanted to share with you is just an update in terms of the grants that we have ongoing in support of the community safety and well-being plan set out by the county. So Project Serve and Detect is a collaboration with the Brant Safe Streets. So in an effort to access additional resources to address traffic issues and concerns throughout the county, there's work being done in relation to that as a part of this grant. So the grant, as part of the grant, we received just over $98,000 per year for 3 years. So it's a 2022 to 2025 grant. And the intent is to purchase one, as we call it, an ALPR, which is an automated license plate reading system per year to install on Brant OPP cruisers. Currently, we have access to that kind of technology, but it's a resource that's shared with 2 other detachments. So limited availability is fair to say with the current setup, but it is a really great piece of kit. And as you saw by the dollar figure, that it's an expensive piece of kit, but it is very valuable. And with that grant, the priorities are education, enforcement, and an increased awareness for not only the community, but for the officers when they use that piece of equipment. And of course, that'll all contribute to road safety in the county. So data about ALPR indicates that officers stop and charge 30% more violators when they're using that system. So what it does is it reads the license plate and sends a message through the computer as to whether someone might be a suspend drive, like if the registered owner is suspend drive, or if their validation isn't current, or any other licensing issues, anything that would be an offense that they could legitimately stop that vehicle for and take enforcement action. The other grant is the Victim Support Grant. So that grant was based on data from 2015 to 2019 that indicated a 20% increase in intimate partner violence calls here in the county. At that time, there were more intimate partner violence calls than the total number of violent crime calls. So certainly that's significant and noteworthy. So we received funding of $104,500 for that grant. And what that's going to do is it's going to allow for the creation and continuation of community relationships with Nova Vita and the County of Brant and Brant OPP. So work as a collaborative. So collaborative presentations, a media campaign, and county supports are all among the priorities for that grant. So education in the community and for both officers and the service providers. In addition, a transportation fund that's going to support people anywhere in the county accessing service, because we know in rural areas that sometimes accessing service is a barrier. So the additional funding will eliminate that barrier for anyone in need. The other element is it supports the hiring of a transitional support worker with specialized knowledge that can assist the people that are requiring support in dealing with intimate partner violence and human trafficking instances. So what's going on is that the police are making referrals to that transitional support worker to connect the people in need of support, because as you well know, that we would sometimes have occasion to meet some of these people and offer them support and make those connections. So the transitional support worker has been hired. She's been meeting with officers to provide training at this point, and so the referral processes has started. The media campaign and flyers have been created, so those will be coming hopefully soon. And additional workshops will be planned as well. So those are the actions that have been taken to date and some of the next steps. And those are the updates I wanted to share with you tonight.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Any questions? Councillor Howes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to Chair Haley and Inspector Quenneville. Am I saying that right? Sorry,
yes, sir.
I
stumble, okay.
I stumble every time. Thank you very much for this information. We are very pleased to remove the word interim from your title and to hear that you're permanent. We're very, very pleased about that. And I'm also grateful to receive this anecdotal information, the statistics, this is all very valuable for us. We do get calls from constituents or concerned about this, concerned about that, and we do spend some time politely explaining to people that the OPP determines the priorities of the OPP. We don't. And we always try to make that clear. And because you guys know the statistics of what's actually going to endanger people. And you make those decisions, and they're hard decisions. But it's to learn that the two traffic officers that we've financially sponsored, so to speak, to hear that they've basically laid 2,300 charges in a year is a significant piece of information that we're glad to receive. And that's good news. And it's important also that we receive bad news, like a 38% increase in mental health calls. So my question is, I have two questions. The first is, do you see more opportunities moving forward on how we can communicate this type of information to the public? The better that within reason, the better the public understands the picture, the less frustrations that some people might feel, or the more understanding they might have if they see the OPP focused on an issue that's different than what's important to them. So that's my one question. My second question is just from what Jennifer was saying about the police presence in the schools and the school board reviewing that, and which is disappointing to hear, especially at the high school level, where I understand it's been effective in the past. Do we have an idea of how long that review is to take? So that's my two questions. Thank you.
Part one and part two.
So to your first question, through Councilor Pierce, I've wanted to develop a media strategy. So I think Chair Haley and I are going to be sitting down. Well, I know we are. We're going to be sitting down to talk about that, but in partnership with my media relations officer, to talk about more deliberate messaging that I think, to your point, will help support and educate some of the members of the community as to what's going on and what some of the priorities might be, but also recognizing that people's perception is their reality. So if they are concerned about an issue, I think it's fair that we have some understanding of what that is, and then we have an opportunity to address it. So not to be dismissive of, just because it doesn't reveal itself on our stats, that it's not important to somebody. So I think that goes along with the community safety and well-being plan, and considering empathy and people's perspective, we need to do that as well. So I want to hear about that, and there's obviously a process for that, but I think we need to consider it. But I think a really strong media strategy that addresses all of those issues will aid in the communication, and the Brant County Dispatch, like seeing topics in there that will evolve as important issues. And because right now we kind of picked based on what we thought people might want to know and what people need to know, what we're seeing as pressures. But certainly going forward, when we continue to create the Brant County Dispatch, we can address some of those items, I think, in there. And the other item, the school resource officer, we don't have a time frame. There was some discussion about December, but that was very tentative as to when they might come back with some findings from their review, but nothing at this point. And we are in the separate school system, but just not the public. So just to make that distinction, we are still going to the separate schools.
Okay, thank you very much. And we great answers. And what I'm hearing is that there's an open door in the sense of you are interested in hearing about the concerns of the constituents, and we've got your email, which is great.
Through you, Chair, I think there's a process that we want to establish too, now that we have an inspector permanently here. So there'll be more information coming out just in terms of what that communication channel would look like. Communications has been front and center for the police service board, as Member Verhey will attest to as well. Whether it's the dispatch piece, whether it's social media presence, whether it's the long-term planning that Inspector Quenville's talking about now. So we want to take some time to figure out what does that decision tree look like in terms of information sharing and protocols, and where does that go and how does that go. So stay tuned for more information about that, because I think it's important that we have clear lines of communication and how that would be available. Also, too, I think it's our intention is that at the will of council, of course, is, you know, if there's an opportunity to keep providing updates and keeping the lines of communication open between the police service board and council, and through Councillor Pierce as well and Mayor Bailey, issues going back and forth. If there's pieces of information that you would like to have or would prefer to have, like, that's what we need to know too, so that we can make sure that we manage that whole process as well, if that makes sense.
Councillor Ferrier.
Thank you, Chair Pierce. Through you to both our speakers today. One of the questions I have is sort of related to Councillor Howe's question about the school board. Now, the school board is going to make the decision they're going to make on whether or not to allow police resource officers in a school. I know I personally benefited greatly from having a high school resource officer. I work with him to this day, Dave Sinclair, and he was a wonderful person and great influence on me. If the school board decides not to let OPP back into the schools, one of the benefits a lot of folks don't understand about the high school resource officers is that they're actually also beneficial to the police officers, who then see youth in a different light instead of only ever connecting with youth who are in trouble, and also seeing those youth who sometimes are in trouble in a different light in their school, and being able to develop a rapport and a bit of a relationship with. Is the OPP open to, and have they thought about how they would continue to have their officers get that experience of seeing youth in a different light if the school board doesn't allow that high school resource officer position to continue?
Through you. We're still evaluating that because it's not every school board, quite frankly. So I know internally we are conducting a survey as well to see, I think it's through the University of Waterloo, one of their PhD students there is surveying the whole organization to evaluate our school resource officer program. So it's safe to say that it is front of mind for people, but like I said, not every school board has taken this position. So we're kind of in a wait and see kind of scenario, but yes, to your point, they'll have to evaluate that. Those relationships are important, and as you said, they're very influential at a very young age. So we can't miss that opportunity. So we'll have to look at that.
And one follow-up, if I can. When I've connected with OPP officers over the last several years, even previous to council here in the county, the morale, and I'm not saying this to put a positive spin on everything, but the morale seems really high compared to other police services that I have contact with. How is, from your point of view, having been here a bit now, how is the morale? How are the stats regarding our local detachments, mental health, their modified duty, et cetera, related to some of the trauma that can happen for them when they're in the field?
Well, I guess, so I've been here since June. And during that time, we've had the 4 barbecues that the Police Service Board has hosted and the Challenge Coin, and it seems very positive to me, but and that's been all of our perception when we engage with everyone, and some of the feedback that I've received speaking to officers, at work. But so I think it's positive, but I'm a little bit biased. But and I think that, quite honestly, having some permanency, like that's been some of the feedback from the officers, that they're glad that I'm here and they know I'm going to be here, and that it provides them with some reassurances as well. The MCERT worker being in the office and riding with officers, we know that anecdotally that officers take advantage of that support themselves from time to time. It's there, they don't have to reach out or make another appointment. So it's absolutely a benefit, and we know that was an unintended benefit of that program, but certainly supports everyone. And so officers are accessing those supports, and probably more than ever before, they're aware of like the variety of supports that are available, both through our association and through the organization and our Healthy Workplace team. And that's a regular part of the follow-up from any crisis or any difficult call. That's part of a referral process to our Healthy Workplace team, where they conduct follow-up with all the officers.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for your service. Thank you for the tour recently. That was wonderful. And appreciate it.
Thank you. So I've got Councillor Chambers and then Councillor Gatwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and through you to the inspector. I think I understood that you spent some time in the great county of Elgin doing some police work, and Elgin is a rural county, much like Brant County, so I think we're going to be well served. I have a few things I want to throw out to you, and you maybe can comment after I throw them out. And they're related to policing in rural areas as opposed to urban areas. And Councillor Coleman, I know, will appreciate some of these things, and some of the people that don't live on farms in the rural area may appreciate them as well. One of the things that happens out in the rural areas is livestock sometimes gets out, sometimes can cause problems on roads, sometimes can be an issue with various things, and sometimes police become involved with livestock, so that's one thing. If you drive around this time of year especially, and keep your eyes looking into the fields, it's not unusual if you go on your way home tonight, take a look in the fields, maybe not quite now, but in a month there certainly will be situations where farmers leave, in some cases, millions of dollars of equipment in fields overnight because they don't take the combine home every night, and they don't take the trucks home every night, and they don't take their tractors home every night, and they rent land throughout the county. So it would be a shame to see vandalism and theft and whatnot with the equipment being left in fields overnight, which is a necessity. The other issue that happens quite often that people lose a lot of patience with, and that's equipment, large equipment, small equipment, traveling on roads from field to field. I've driven a combine with a 40-foot header across a road, and people have no patience. They want to go around you, and they can't. And how do the officers respond to issues like that? And the last one, I call it the daytime, nighttime, rural, urban question. In urban areas, people stay home at night, and they go to their businesses in the daytime. So policing in daytime in the village is very important, because the businesses are or rather, at nighttime it is very important in rural urban areas, because the stores are empty and closed and dark, and it's easy for people that want to steal stuff to do it at night in villages and urban areas. In rural areas, farmers stay home at night usually. They work all day, they stay home at night, and they're there to protect their properties and their barns, etc. But during the day, they are out in the fields, and they're more prone to have petty crimes and thefts, etc. during the daytime, as opposed to the urban areas that are at nighttime. So that's a whole bunch of stuff thrown out, basically talking about policing in rural areas as opposed to urban areas. Maybe you can comment on that.
Sure, through you. I will tell you, I grew up in Chatham too, so farm town as well, and did my share of corn detasseling. So it's I've been out in the county in the farms, and in Elgin, I can tell you that I responded to numerous livestock on roadway calls, absolutely, it happens. Are there significant traffic safety concerns and risks to motorists when I'm trying to round up a horse or a cow that's gotten loose? But those are conversations. Certainly, I don't believe it is intentional, but certainly if it becomes a prolific issue, I think those are opportunities for discussions with the owners. But the animals escape sometimes through no intention of anybody. So that I think those are conversations and have to be dealt with on a case by case basis. I'm not sure what more on that one you would like, if there was anything specific, except to say that I think we need to consider the situation and whether it's a repeat kind of occurrence with the farmer. Equipment in fields overnight, absolutely, that is certainly worth noting and certainly worth bringing to the mind of the officers, because as you mentioned, if we've got a lot of new officers, if they've grown up in urban centers, it just may not be a consideration. And I think that all of this, every point that you raised, goes to the media strategy that I referred to earlier. So I know my media relations officer there was already discussion about the publicizing about, just to your point, about equipment on roadways this time of year. And, to have patience, to plan ahead, to anticipate that's going to be there. And because, we know people become frustrated because they haven't left themselves enough time quite often, right? So, but all of that is part of the media strategy. But to your point about equipment in fields, I can't tell you the number of times that I've been to a B&E where someone reported that their dog was barking at 2 o'clock in the morning, and that's not like their dog, but they never got up to call or to do anything. They rolled over. So it's incumbent on us to take action when these flags happen for us in the community, or to report the suspicious headlights that are on a county road where no one has any business being at 2 o'clock in the morning. Because it's not helpful to anybody to respond to it at 9 o'clock in the morning when unfortunately the damage has been done. So I guess I just ask for timely intervention and to take advantage of our call center and the officers are working, have them come there to the suspicious person. Because I've been to lots of those too in the middle of the county in the middle of the night. So, but you're right, it's about raising awareness. And I think our media strategy will speak to all of that. And just to your point about daytime, nighttime patrols in urban centers versus rural, I think, again, that's a part of an education discussion to share your concerns with my teams.
And just to follow up, if I might, Mr. Chairman, one thing farmers like to do is talk, and it wouldn't hurt for the officers to pull over and have a chat with the farmers once in a while. It gives both of them a break, and they can talk about the weather like farmers like to do. And the farmers get to know the police, and the police get to know the farmers, and everything's happy in the rural areas.
Absolutely.
Councillor Pierce, can I just follow up one point? Councillor Chambers, also, I think we can identify, being involved in the livestock industry myself, there is training courses available for emergency personnel. So if we identify that, we can also ensure that Brant personnel are part of that training course to be able to safely handle the livestock, or in case of emergency, be able to properly and safely euthanize animals that are in distress. So there is opportunities, and I think we've also talked about animal welfare issues as well, and how that response will work with police if needed, and of course the mental health piece as well with farmers.
Thank you for that. Councillor Gatward and then Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Andrea and Jennifer. I like the new name of the community safety groups. We used to call them community policing groups. And it's nice to see them in this new newsletter. One of our previous inspectors was working on reviving those groups, and we had meetings down in Onondaga, and it was well attended. The hall was full, actually. People were interested, and I'm wondering if there's plans to start a southeast group, or a group in Mount Pleasant, Scotland, Oakland area, and a group down in the far east of Onondaga, Middleport area. If somebody would like to fill me in on that? That'd be great.
I'll start and then I'll probably pass the baton to Inspector, but as part of the communication planning that we're gonna be sitting down and doing is we're gonna also be talking about those town hall meetings that were done in 2019. I think they were, obviously well before COVID, and I think with the change in personnel and everything else, I think we just need to get back on track to what that looks like. With the engagement of the community and having those potential meetings, but also I think we've left space within the program that if there is a group in Mount Pleasant or down in Onondaga that wants to get organized, the support would be there to have a community safety group. And just for information, the name change really reflects that the job of those groups are not to be policing, right? That's the OPP. We want to make sure that it aligns with the community safety and well-being plan, which is why it's a community safety group versus a community policing group, right? They're just trying to get everybody in line. So I think there's space available in the big picture for interested citizens that want to get together and organize themselves, and resources would be available with OPP to help, like they do with the Paris and the Brant North group. It's just a matter of identifying those folks. Unfortunately, wherever lists were created from people that attended in 2019 are not available, so we would probably be starting from scratch with that.
And a follow-up quickly on this great little newsletter. Are we going to put these in the community centers, in our libraries? And libraries are now going to be customer service offices, so residents can pick one up when they're in there. And
so there will be, through you, Chair. There will be hard copies available, but every resident through Canada Post will receive a copy of this newsletter. So every resident will already have received it. There will be copies available for the county offices, OPP detachment, wherever. We'll work with Nancy and Heather Boyd to determine where best to get them distributed, but there will be extra copies available in hard places for pickup as well.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to our two presenters. Councillor Chambers talked about the rural world. Let me flip across to the urban world. I'm going to be very specific. I'm going to talk about Paris. There is a belief, if social media is to be believed, that our town is becoming less safe. And I would put the challenge to you as the new inspector and as the head of our police services board, is there a way that we can demonstrate what the safety level is in our town and whether it's improving or declining, and what areas we need to put particular focus on? And we shouldn't knock social media too much. Some of the groups that we deal with have 7,000 people in. I mean, they've got tremendous outreach. And if we could find a way of feeding in to those social media channels real data, not the data that people believe they know, but the real data that comes from you as a police services board or you as the OPP, I think it would really help to just give people a good set of facts on which to base their opinion rather than opinion on which to base their opinion. Thank you.
Through you, Chair. I guess first I'd like to know what less safe means, because that means different things for everyone. So that certainly would be important to drill down on that to understand what that what that means for people. So that would be one perspective. But certainly, again, to the earlier point, the media strategy is exactly would serve your inquiry, and we would be able to provide some information that way. Historically, the OPP is not in the practice of engaging in a back and forth over social media, so we would certainly have to rely on people within those groups to link to the data that we share and find other avenues to share that data, because it doesn't necessarily serve us well to get into a back and forth with people. So we can put the data out and, like I said, rely on advocates to share those links and provide that kind of data to say, like, well, this is what the OPP is saying, this is the information they're sharing, if that makes sense.
Okay.
if I may. I think that would be a very good way of going about it. But in the absence of hard data, anything fills a vacuum, and people will talk about less safe without actually defining it, as you just indicated. But it's just that general feeling that we need to, in my mind, we need to put some legs and feet on it to say, this is just how safe we are. One of your predecessors, and I can't remember which one it was, did actually bring forward a piece from Maclean's, I think it was Maclean's, a few years ago, which demonstrated, I think, or indicated that the county as a whole was something like the 7th most safe location in Canada. I don't know how they got to that. Good question. How did they get to that? But something, the more we can give people hard data and not have them believe gossip, the better it will be. Thank you.
Councillor Pierce?
Absolutely. Yeah, go ahead.
Councillor Bill, I think that's a really good point. One of the things that we talk about a lot at Police Service Board is that type of information, whether it's Paris specific, county specific, St. George specific, Burford specific. There's a lot of discussion that goes around all that, but I think it's important that we also put things in context that Brant County is not alone in some of these challenges. All of our surrounding counties are facing similar challenges. We've talked a lot about vehicle thefts, for example, and the percentage of vehicle thefts that are stolen that have the keys still left in them, or the valuables that have been taken because they've left wallets in them. And I'm not saying that's all cars, but it's a trend that's happening not just here, but also as our communities get bigger and we're bringing in residents from other areas. It's attractive for some of this criminal element to kind of poach into. So it's something that we're talking about quite a bit. I think how do we define it? How do we share the information is, I think, what you're asking about. I think that's something we can get on the radar. And the statistics package that the Detachment Commander's Report provides is just a starting point, but I think being able to translate some of those statistics into some information that you can use as speaking points would also be helpful, I think, too.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the inspector, and following up on Councillor Chambers, and this is back to a rural question, Councillor Belt. Speeding is still a big issue in the county, but the first comment I want to make is that when you're doing your media release on machinery traveling the roads, I still believe it's the law is that we are to travel on the travel portion of the road.
Yes, sir.
Correct. That is what the public does not understand. They think we're supposed to be on the damn shoulders. We're not. We are supposed to be on the travel portion as far over as we can be. Sometimes that takes another part lane. But back to the speeding issue, and it seems to always get raised during election time, and I see 2 emails come in today on issues in my ward of people complaining of speeding. I'm not going to dwell on it. My question is, we've had this stunt driving for a number of years now, the fines. How many are carried out that they are actually charged with stunt driving and have to do the time? Or how many are pleaded out and they get a lesser offense? I know you don't control the courts, but if we're having stunt driving fines, they're not always being carried out.
Through you, Chair. I don't have that data, as you might expect, with me right now. But you're right. A lot of the charges, once an officer lays that, it's not what ends up happening in the end, for a whole variety of reasons. And I don't want to speak on behalf of the justice system, but I know that there are a variety of reasons, whether it's a very full docket, whether it's circumstances about the individual person that results in some leniency, because sometimes it can cause financial hardship or impacts their employment, which often a justice would take that into consideration. So there are a lot of variables, and you're right to say that the percentage of convictions of stunt is probably less than we would hope. but I don't have a number to speak to on that. And quite frankly, it would be, I'm not sure that I could get it because I don't get what the prosecutors deal down to, like that if there is any negotiations around that, I don't get the results on that. I get what the officers lay through our data sources, but not what the resolution was. So, sorry, I'm not sure that really addresses your question, sir.
I figured that's what the answer would be. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just two issues that I'd like to discuss with you, Andrea, at some point in the future, not tonight, is cannabis and impaired driving. And I just want to say welcome to the county, and I hope you're still here tomorrow after tonight.
Thank you, sir.
Anybody else with questions? Councillor Wheat.
Thank you. This is more through you, Mr. Chair. This is more of a personal, lighter note. You mentioned earlier in your presentation that you were a hockey mom.
Yes,
so
sir.
I asked this question on behalf of Coleman, Chambers, Pierce, and maybe even our manager, Rob Walton. But for myself, are you a cousin or a sister to Joel Quenneville, former NHL star and coach? Because we need somebody to get us some free tickets to a game.
Well, that's my married name, so through you, sorry. So not that I know of, but you never know. Go Leafs, go.
Perfect. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much for that. That was, as I said, very informative. And I agree that this is something that, we spoke a bit as Police Services Board, and I know we spoke a bit around this horseshoe. This is a good conversation I think we can continue to have at a frequency.
Happy to do it. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much for your time. Okay. Motion to receive, Mr. Mayor? Second, Councilor Ferrier. Any questions on that? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much. On to 5.1, adoption of the previous minutes. Can I get a mover? Councilor Ferrier, Councilor Bell. Any questions? Okay, no questions. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 6, any business arising from those minutes? Councilor Bell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I knew I'd find the right spot for it. With respect to item 9.2, which is the Grand River Street North at William Street, proposed eastbound left turn arrow phase. Perhaps staff could answer my question, what is the schedule for this work? Because I'm troubled by the fact, not only for this issue, but with a couple of other issues, that we make a decision in council and then we let the community know it's going to happen, and there's general delight with many of these things, and then nothing happens, or it doesn't happen very quickly.
Okay. General Manager Walton.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Bell. The intention is for that work to be done this fall. I don't have the actual schedule for when it's going to be undertaken, but certainly the time for it to happen is not that long. So it is, for it to happen this fall is not that long. So that is the intention.
Okay, just as a matter of improvement in our overall practice, when we have these kind of decisions that we make about roadworks or parking, if we could try and attach a timeline to it so that we don't get caught out saying, but you told me it was going to happen, and it hasn't happened. Thank you.
Anything else business arising? Okay, thank you for that. Consent items, 711, which is RPT-0255-22, various parking and traffic modifications. Can I get a mover? Councillor Coleman, Councillor Bell. Questions? Councillor Bell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Rob, perhaps Rob could just explain the statement about Arlington Parkway, which says no changes for discussion purposes only. If you could elaborate on those.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Bell. When this report was first written, there was a recommendation in here, which I personally did not agree with. And when my staff and I talked about it more, they agreed with me that what we should do is we should, in the 2023 budget under Brand Safe Streets, put in a recommendation for this location which is different than what they had proposed, which we're looking at some sort of a pedestrian crossing here so we're planning on doing something out of the budget. The timing of this would never have been completed this fall anyways because of the time to get everything in place. So our proposal is to do something in 2023, which we will bring in front of council.
Yeah.
Councillor Bell?
If I may follow up. And again, it's about time. I can remember going out to the junction of Arlington Parkway in Newstead, talking to one of the residents, fed that into the Brant Safe Street strategy. There is a long lag time, and it plays to the credibility of the Brant Safe Street strategy when people don't see things happening, I would say, at a reasonable pace. And I know, Rob, there are all kinds of reasons why it takes time. But I think if we're to maintain credibility on Brant Safe Street strategy, we are going to have to up the pace and do things much more quickly than we've done today. And if I may, while I'm on the same subject, in November of last year, we passed a parking bylaw for Vic Chambers Place. So 9 months later, the signs have just gone up. We passed a parking bylaw for Arlington Parkway, I forget how long ago. The signs still haven't gone up. And we need to just work harder at closing the timeline between approving in council and seeing things actually in action in place on the ground. Thank you.
Do you want to respond to that?
Through the chair to Councillor Bell, if I had heard of these particular ones before, I could have had to answer them. I don't have an answer for those particular ones as to what's happened, but there's a myriad of things that have to happen for these. Locates is one of them. They sometimes take months, just to start out with. So I think that actually under Brant Safe Streets, we've made incredible progress. There was recently a report to council talking about the number of things that have been done. And you know, not all of them can happen in a short period of time. So yes, it does take time for these things to happen. And when you get work queued up, there's a number of things that have to happen. Ordering the materials, getting the men to do it, and the locates. So making it happen faster is probably not realistic without substantial increase in workforce.
Yeah, if I may, one final comment, and that's particularly with respect to parking and parking signs. And I'll give another example. Flag Avenue up in the southwest of Paris. If you haven't been to Flag Avenue, go take a look. Look at the townhouse development there. Look at the parking situation we've got. We again passed a parking bylaw on Flag Avenue a long time ago, and the parking signs are not up. And the responsibility for putting the parking signs up is actually the developer. I'm not picking a fight here with our operations department or any part of the county, but we need to be more on top of these issues to make sure that we don't set a situation, which we've got now, where people think you can park on this road and then suddenly we come along months later and suddenly you can't park there. We're going to have a real problem. We'll come back to it in item 11. Thank you.
Councillor Ferrier.
Yeah, just by way of comment, though, I think we need to put the perspective in there that to some folks it will never be enough. There will never be enough traffic imposition. And you know, when we look at Brant Safe Streets, we're looking at, I think the average was once every week, some major change to our Safe Streets program has happened. Some actual change to something physical in the community, not including all the educational pieces, not including the signage. And then, I mean, we just heard today, you know, literally thousands of new tickets on things that people complain about, and yet the complaints are ever growing. And a municipality is not the end-all and be-all of managing an individual's bad behavior, which is what a lot of traffic issues are. So I just want to commend that program and also staff. But I do think, yeah, there's always room for improvement, but this council is going to have to, or next council is going to have to make some big changes then in terms of budget. And I think for a community our size, with the rural and urban piece, with as many kilometers of roads as the city of Brantford, with only a third of the population to sustain that tax base, I don't know a community our size that does more on traffic calming and safe streets and pedestrian safety as well. So I think, you know, all of these ideas also have to be sort of put in the context of what is being done that is effective. But the public attitude about traffic is just, it's off the chain. and I think will be for quite some time. And I don't just think here, I think that's all over the province.
Yeah, that's a good point, and I think I could just circle back to something Councillor Bell said earlier in regards to the social media, people using opinions to form an opinion, and I think that's the fact that we've got a lot of information out there of late about Grand Safe Streets and what it's done, just for that exact reason, right? Here are the facts, right? Any other questions? Okay, so we've got it moved and seconded. No other questions, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, 7.1.2, RPT 0274 tender award for airport pumper apparatus. Councillor Howes, Councillor Gatward, questions? Seems like a no-brainer to me. All those, Councillor Gatward.
Just one quick one. Do we know when we might receive this truck?
Well, I could call on Mr. Watson. Come on up and.
Through you, Mr. Chair. The pumper, if awarded to Dependable, is under construction fall of 2022. So it would be expected in the first 6 months of 2023.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, just a quick question through you, Mr. Chair, to the chief. That unit 321 is being replaced. You said in your report it was placed in the county service in 2013. Was it purchased brand new?
Through you, Mr. Chair. No, it was a used pumper that was purchased. And in the report, it will be continued to be kept on county property as a parts truck for unit 317, which is the aerial.
No, that part I read. I'm just wondering, because when was it built? Is what I'm asking. Because in the report you say we can use them for 20 years.
Yeah, so it's 20 years old in 2023. So
okay. Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions? Mayor Bailey.
Does it have an axe?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, it will have at least one axe.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mr. Mayor. Yes. Any other questions? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. 7.1.3, Advisory Committee Recruitment. Can I get a mover? Get it on the floor. Councillor Ferrier, Councillor Chambers. Questions on that? Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through to Alicia, who's online. Maybe she could answer this. I did email earlier today, but I just wondered, I don't see the Brant Rural Water Quality Committee on that, and I don't know if that's the county that appoints those members, or is it through the GRCA?
Alicia?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chairman. I would ask Councillor Miller if he could please repeat his question. He froze briefly, and I missed the committee name that he's looking for.
Okay, so, Mr. Chair, I'll repeat it.
Yep, go ahead.
Alicia, I'm just wondering, I don't see the Brant Rural Water Quality Committee there. And I don't know if that's done through the county or it's done through the GRCA.
So what we did, through you, Mr. Chairman, what we did was we pulled all of the records from 2018. What I can do to Councillor Miller is I can take a quick look through to see if that is the GRCA. If it is a County of Brant appointee, then we will include it with the list when we go out to recruitment.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on that? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, consent items to be received. I think we have 8 of them. Anybody willing to pass them all? Okay, Councillor Coleman, Councillor Chambers, does anybody want anything pulled?
I have a question about 7.2.8.
Okay, 7.2.8, and Councillor Miller?
I don't want anything pulled, but I do want to just make a comment on 7.2.2.
Go ahead.
Well, I think our water division really should be commended. You know, there's hundreds and hundreds of things they look at in the inspection report. They got perfect, and perfect doesn't just happen. We know that, so a lot of hard work goes into that. So I just want to point them out and commend them for that, and hope they keep up the good work because I don't want to go to jail for bad water. So.
Well said, Councillor. Councillor Ferrier?
Yeah, again, not needing to be pulled, just, there was a comment on the Accessibility Advisory Committee minutes about the toilets in the public washrooms being possibly too low. I didn't go out there with a tape measure today, but I'm just wondering if that's one, true, and two, if we're gonna do, what we're gonna do about that and when.
Okay. Mayor Bailey, you got something for that?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Ferrier. We are going to replace both the toilets to a 19-inch height. The drop of the 17-inch is not suitable for transferring people from their wheelchairs to the toilet. That was something just that we missed, and it's going to be corrected. And as we do other facilities in the county, we now know that toilets need to be 19 inches high.
That's wonderful, and that's why we have those committees, right? To give us some
Absolutely.
insight, and that we're moving quick makes me feel great. So, like to move them along.
That's fantastic. Excellent. Okay, so we've got a mover and a seconder for all of them. We've got 2 questions that have been answered. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay. Moving on to staff reports, section 8. 8.1 is RPT-0306-22, the 2022 Municipal Election Compliance Audit Committee appointments. Can I get a mover? Councillor McAlpine, Mayor Bailey. Questions? Seeing none. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 8.2, RPT-0226-22, the Piverney Road Extension, Piverney? Road Extension. Councillor Coleman, Mayor Bailey. Questions on that extension of the road? Councillor Gatward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You notice that it used to be called Swamp Road,
I saw that, yeah.
and it is swampy out there, and I just wondered how many feet. I know they have a 10-acre parcel, but I was wondering how many feet are we extending the road?
Mr. Walton?
Sorry, through the chair to Councillor Gatward. I'm not sure exactly, but I believe it's 200 meters, which is just over 650 feet, plus or minus.
Well, as long as they put a good base, then they won't sink in the spring. Thank you.
Sounds like a good idea. Okay. Any other questions on that? Councillor Miller.
I'm going to ask now because it may come up later. Is that going to be hard surfaced?
No.
Any other questions? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Moving on, 8.3, RPT-0271-22, the agreement for water and wastewater billing services. Mover, please. Councillor Wheat, Councillor Bell. Questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. 8.4, RPT-0276-22, municipal drain maintenance progress update. Can I get a mover? Councillor Miller, Councillor McAlpine. Any questions on that report? Councillor Chambers.
I don't have a question right off the bat, Mr. Chairman, but just a comment. This report is well received by myself and long overdue, I think, and my accolades and commendations to the department for doing this. It's municipal drainage isn't an easy thing, and they've made a report that tries to simplify a complicated issue, and we just need to keep the reports coming and keep the drains flowing.
Councillor McAlpine.
And I was just going to repeat that as well. In our ward, it's been well received, and the drains that have been done have been really appreciated. So, the one farmer alone said he saved about 10 acres of farmland. He figures he can use it much more effectively. So,
nice.
Yeah.
That's good news. Okay. Councillor Gatward.
Thank you. Just a quick comment. I was happy to see this drainage map because I've never seen one before except in the drainage superintendent's office one day. And it's nice to see that a section of Birch Road that's going to be done next year that isn't involved in the drainage program. And I'd also like to comment that I've had compliments about our new drainage person, Shannon Tweedle, and that she does a great job. And I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Always nice to hear. Any other questions? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 8.5 RPT-0301-22, the appointment of an engineer for the Hugh White Municipal Drain under Section 76. Mover? Howes, Councillor Howes. Mayor Bailey. Questions on this report? Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question for this one, but similar question for 8.6 as well. Do we know if any of those lands that are being drained or worked on fall under CN or CP's rails jurisdictions?
Mr. Walton?
Through the chair to Councillor Miller, actually, I do not know the answer to that, sorry. But can find out.
Yeah, if you could, I know it sounds like a strange question, but I heard some information at AMO that I'd really like to find that out. Thank you.
So get back to us on that then?
And can I add something to that?
Absolutely.
Through the chair to council, I know that there's a survey going out from, I believe it could be from AMO on the Drainage Act and CN and some of the interaction there, which we will respond to. And certainly with the rail corridor that we have through Brant County, it is a concern that they are choosing now not to participate in an Ontario statute. So I think that this will get resolved. Back in my days of consulting, I wrote lots of drain reports, lots of them involved railways. There was lots of cooperation back in the day, and I think they realized that drainage is good for all properties, all roads, all utilities. And when you don't have good drainage, you cause problems for everyone. So hopefully common sense will prevail here and we'll get back to normalcy.
Okay, just to follow up, Mr.
Go ahead, yeah.
Just want to say I'm appreciative of General Manager Walton being cognizant of the issues there because there was some strong language used in some of the discussions I was involved with. So I don't want to see that happen to us. So if we could maybe be a little proactive, that'd be good. Thank you.
Perfect. Any other questions on that? Councillor Chambers.
Through you to General Manager. I'm just wondering when they tinker with the assessment schedules or writing, will there be a quarter revision for appeals to the new assessment?
Through the chair to Councillor Chambers, yes, it's the same procedure. Just there's under Section 76, there's no construction. Under 78, there can be construction and the new assessment schedule. So, and really, when you get into these old reports from the 50s, 60s, and I worked on reports where it was back to like 1892 and whatever. Clearly, those assessment schedules are way out of whack. Properties have been divided, things have changed for whatever reasons. Some of them good reasons, some of them not good reasons, but so these do need to get new schedules for sure. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 8.6 RPT 030222, appointment of an engineer for the Mitchell Municipal Drain. Councillor Miller moves. Councillor Coleman seconds. Any questions on this particular one? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Moving on to section 9, which is communications, 9.1. Get a mover to receive. Councillor Coleman, Councillor Miller. Any questions on that? Councillor Miller.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I will point out, we got an email today from staff. They will be following up with the letter writer on this. When I seen it last week or the week before, whatever, I was a little surprised at the charges. I guess I'm not familiar with every fee we charge. So I guess there's an extra fee for the $750. But that's not my biggest concern. That's a big concern. I think if I got that bill, I'd be even more concerned. But what disturbed me, I guess, the most about the letter was it says the extra charges were a complete shock, and almost as much as the base cost. So the extra charges were a complete shock. And I understand there's 3 sides to every story, but what I would like to know, Mr. Chair, and I don't know if we can get to the bottom of this tonight, is was this resident, are all residents, are they informed when they go to use these services that if they go for a Saturday, it's going to be an extra cost? And I know what during when someone passes away, it's a very stressful time. Maybe you don't take in all the information, but what I'd like to know again, Mr. Chair, is are residents, are our staff letting residents know about these extra possible charges if they go for a weekend funeral service?
Okay. Cindy, you want to respond to that, please?
Yeah, through the chair. So I did speak with staff about this, and sorry, there's some feedback there. When families do make arrangements, the fee schedule is reviewed by the funeral home with the families. There's regular communication with the funeral home so that they are up to date on what the county's fees and charges are. So that is the standard practice. In this particular case, it's my understanding that it was reviewed, but would need to do, a little bit more investigation on that. So it, like you said, it could have been missed by the family when that information was provided. But we do try to ensure that it is not a shock to families when they receive the invoice after the funeral.
Okay, and again, I appreciate the answer, and I guess that's all we can ask. I guess it's just to make sure staff make sure they're upfront with those charges, because again, obviously, to this letter writer, just didn't see it coming. So very, very, very unfortunate.
Councillor Weed.
Thank you. Question for Mayor Bailey through you, Mr. Chair. As a funeral director, doesn't the funeral director provide the family with all the costs that are going to happen, like the cost of the church, the cost of the burial, the cost of the lunch provided, whether it be with the church ladies or an outside caterer? I just felt, or I feel, that the funeral director would go over, because he certainly did with me when I lost my wife. I knew everything that was going to cost every item, and that was through Kip, through Jason Vernoy, as a funeral director, and I would think that situation or that extra money perhaps should have been covered by the funeral director.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Wheat, that's exactly right. When you go in to make arrangements, everything, including the organist, the sexton to open the church, all of that is listed. And there would be an amount for the opening of the grave, plus the dressing of the grave would be whatever that is now. I've been licensed for a very long time, so I know what it was when I was doing them. But there is a list, and it would. Do you want the grave opened, and do you want it dressed? Will you be having a graveside service? All that kind of stuff. And certainly, if someone passes away on a Thursday or a Friday, and they want a Saturday burial, for as long as I've been doing it, since 1979, we always we default right to it. Like, do you want to wait till Monday, or do you want to have a Saturday burial? But there is an extra cost because we've got to have the vault brought in, we have to have the workers come in. So there's always, for as long as I've ever known. So it's nothing to do with our county staff. This is all completely the way the funeral director presented it to the family when they were making their arrangements. And they would have got a sheet that had everything. It's almost like a checklist. You want 1 night visitation, 2 night visitations. It's going to be a cremation, all of that kind of stuff. So none of this would come back to the county. All of this is done through the funeral home.
Good clarification. Okay. Anything else on that? Okay, so we've got a mover and a second to receive that as communications. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Other business, 10.1, notice of motion. Councillor Bell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a follow-up from the discussion we had in the Planning and Development Committee meeting of a couple of weeks ago, when the issue of parking, particularly in more dense parts of Paris, have been shown to be a challenge. And if we had our new official plan approved, then we'd be moving quite quickly on to a zoning bylaw, a comprehensive zoning bylaw update. That is not going to be the case. So in discussion with staff, they did come to the conclusion that they could bring this forward, specifically the parking bylaw and then the implications it has to those parts of the zoning bylaw that relate to parking. So I drafted this notice of motion. I offered it to staff for improvement. Unfortunately, the improvement came just a little too late for it to be included in the package for today. I think the essence of it is correct. The essence of it is staff, if we so direct them, will conduct a review of parking bylaw ahead of the comprehensive zoning bylaw update. They haven't put a timeline on it because there are lots of moving parts, but it is the anticipation it will be sometime in 2023, and I presume early 2023. But I wanted to get this on the table before the next council comes along. Don't want to leave that with them as an issue. I think it's better that we deal with it and move it forward. As this council, we've seen it, we've seen the issues. So I am looking for a seconder to this. John Pierce, that now as chair cannot second it, but I would look for a seconder for this motion. Councillor Howes, thank you.
So, do you want to read the motion, Councillor Bell?
Which version do you want me to read, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, I guess just kind of the essence of it, the last tweak of it, right?
Mine's written in simpler English, I think.
Yeah, the last one that we had in the email chain, yes.
Yeah. So, whereas the new official plan has been delayed, and with the consequence that the comprehensive zoning bylaw update is therefore delayed, and whereas parking issues are growing exponentially, and particularly in those sections of new residential subdivisions with greater housing density, and whereas these parking issues cannot be permitted to proliferate given the increasing density of developments across the county as set out in our new draft official plan, therefore it is recommended that council direct staff to review, as a matter of urgency, the effectiveness of our current parking bylaw and associated elements of the zoning bylaw, with the intention of updating appropriate bylaws ahead of the comprehensive zoning bylaw update.
Okay, everybody's kind of got the gist of that. Councillor Chambers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The purpose of notice of motions is to give people a heads up on something coming forward. And in this case, I would like to hear from the staff, and the proper way to do this, I believe, is to just leave it as a notice of motion, and it is forthcoming at the next meeting, and then staff can speak to the motion rather than pass a motion directing staff without hearing from staff on what we're directing them to do. So that's how it should be done, and I feel much more comfortable in hearing staff respond to this. They may wish to do it now, but our planning director isn't even here, so, or our general manager isn't here. So I don't think it's an urgent matter. I think the correct procedure is to give notice of motion, and then at the next meeting, have if the staff wishes to, respond to it, and then call the vote at that juncture. That's how notice of motions are supposed to work.
Councillor Bell?
Yeah, that's a very, through you, Mr. Chair, that's a very fair point. Councillor Chambers, I'm just conscious of the limited number of meetings we have before the end of this council term. But to help in that story, our General Manager of Planning has reviewed this, and I can give you her version.
I would like to hear it from her. No offense.
Well,
Point of order, crosstalk.
Okay, so. This one's not a bad feedback. Okay, so what I'm hearing, we've got the notice of motion that's happening here. So my understanding here, and my apologies, I think you're right there, Councillor Chambers, in the fact that, so he brings forward notice of motion today, that this is what his motion is going to be. Are we able to bring that back to our council meeting next week? Now that we've got the motion on there, we put it on the council meeting for next week. And that's.
It's just a heads up.
Yes. Right. Councillor Chambers.
Will appear on the agenda as a motion.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So we're good with that then? Okay.
Just to clarify then, through you, Mr. Chair, to our clerk, that if somebody wanted to create a motion at the meeting, unfortunately that does happen at times, you'd have to ask for a waiving of the rules of notice of motion first, and then the motion. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's my understanding.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. So we're good to wait till next week then, Councillor?
Yeah, happy if it comes up on next week's council meeting.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Perfect. Okay, so we're good on that one. I don't think we need to do anything further on that. So we've got 10.2, Councillor Gatwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, a couple of questions. The Canesville Class EA for sanitary sewer project up Coburn Street West has been on the go for some time. And I'm wondering if that is complete and when would we start on the sanitary sewer project up Coburn Street West? Through you to General Manager Walton.
General Manager Walton.
Through the chair to Councillor Gatward. So the Canesville study is not quite complete. There will be one more PIC, Public Information Center, probably in November. And then we'll finalize the report in early 2023. And then the design of the sanitary sewers and other services out in that area will start then. So the earliest we'll likely see projects would be late 2023 and into 2024.
Thank you. And the reason I asked is I was at a meeting the other day and a city councilor mentioned that project and I thought, oh, maybe they were working on it. So thank you.
Perfect. Okay, and then, so that was it for yours, Councillor Gatwood? That was it for your, okay, good. 10.3, Mayor Bailey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before you is the letter that I was directed to write to the Commission for Ontario for the boundaries. It is a letter that I had permission to send, but because I have a little bit of time, I'm not going to send this out until Friday. It needs to be received by the ministry by Sunday. That's why I couldn't do it any other way. I thought if there was any kind of tweaking that you wanted to do to it before I sent it out, even Friday's package would have been too late. So if everyone's happy with the letter, Councillor Bell, if you want to suggest maybe your tweaking of the letter before we send it out.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Chair. On the second page, with the paragraph beginning the word second, I'll just read what I'm going to suggest. It's written, we recommend that on principle, the alignment of electoral boundaries should be consistent across all three levels of government. I just said as consistent as possible, bearing in mind that there are some obvious challenges there. And the second thing was to make the suggestion, which I think came out in our meeting of last week, that the Commission might consider, rather than an east-west split, a north-south split. So I'd like to be a bit proactive and offer that as a suggestion to them.
Are there any other adjustments or concerns about the letter? Seeing none, I find these all sort of very friendly and they make sense to me. So I'll rewrite this letter and send it out Friday morning to the commission. Everything's good? Thank you.
There was no other business noted at the beginning. Does anybody else have anything for other business at this point? Seeing none, if I can get a motion, oh, Councilor Ferrier? Motion to go on camera. Councilor Ferrier, Councilor Howes. 2 minutes. Okay, I think we're back live again. So we are now back in open session. So as far as the next meeting, this is the last meeting of this term of council for this committee. So I would like to thank committee. There's been a lot of good work done on this committee, and I thank you all for that, and thank you staff. There's been a lot of work done by everybody on that. So appreciate that, and I'm assuming that it'll be sometime in November that we will have our next meeting for this committee. So with that, I shall adjourn